parties identified.
Gary Mitchell with the Lubbock County District Attorney's Office on behalf of the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. The department appears by and through St. Francis Ministries caseworker Brianna Branch and Supervisor Karanda Slade. They're present here in this virtual courtroom, ready to proceed.
Sarah Hudman, attorney for Mother Desiree Vallejos.
Linda Ebeling, attorney for Preston Dotson. We are both present. Is that Ms. Vallejos on the phone?
I don't know. The person here by telephone, can you unmute yourself and tell me your name?
Donna Armstead, grandmother and caregiver.
The phone number is actually me. My mic on my computer does not work.
I see. Okay.
Thank you.
Katie Mason, attorney and guardian ad litem for the child, present ready.
Okay, it's my understanding the child is currently placed with the paternal grandmother, Donna Armstead, and who is asking for a different placement?
We are asking for Mr. Dotson to be allowed to move in with his mother and the child.
Okay, Mr. Mitchell, is the department opposed to that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Hudman, does your client have a position?
Yes, Your Honor. My client is in favor of Mr. Dotson being able to move in with his mother.
Ms. Mason, do you have a position at this point, or do you want to wait until the end of the hearing?
Your Honor, I'm in favor of that right now, but I would also reserve my position after I hear all of the evidence.
Okay. All right, Ms. Ebeling, you want to call your first witness?
Yes, I'll call Preston Dotson.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, Preston, you're the father of Azalea.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And we're here asking that you be allowed to move in with your mom under supervision and whatever conditions the judge would impose. Is that true?
Yes.
All right. And to give a little background, you were recently incarcerated for probation revocation, and that case was resolved and you were released on September 14th. Is that true?
Yes.
And at that time, where did your probation officer require you to live?
My mother's.
Okay. Do you have other family members that you could move in with?
No.
And is that the reason your mother's address was given?
Yes.
All right. And your probation officer is someone you're in frequent contact with since you've been released?
Yes.
All right. And how do you contact her?
By email or call the office.
Okay. And you've been able to get a phone since you've been released?
Yes.
And in that time, have you stayed in the home with your mother and Azalea?
I know.
Okay. And do you know how, let's just talk about where have you stayed? Let's just talk about that.
In a hotel.
All right, you stayed, let's talk about when you first got out. Did your mom and Azalea leave the home and go to one of her approved backup caregivers?
Yes.
All right, so she moved out of the home, so you would be in compliance with probation initially, and you stayed at the home.
Yes.
Okay, and then last Tuesday, is it correct that you went to a hotel at that time?
Yes.
And you stayed there until last Friday?
Yes.
Okay, and obviously your mother and Azalea were not at the hotel.
No, they weren't.
Okay, they went back to her home.
Yes, they were.
All right, and this past weekend, is it true that there was a birthday party and your mom got permission to go back to her backup caregiver with Azalea and stay there for the weekend?
Yes.
And so did you stay at the home then? All right. Did your mom have to help you with the hotel bill?
No, my brother did.
Okay. And let's talk about why that is the case. Do you believe you have a job somewhere waiting for you?
Yes.
With who?
With Jomar.
With Joe Marr?
Yes.
Is that a person or a company?
That's a company.
All right. Doing what kind of work?
Electrical work.
Okay. And what do you have to have in order for him to take you back on?
My ID and my driver's license.
Do you have your ID and driver's license with you now?
No.
What happened to those?
They were lost, and recently reordered one and having it sent to my mother's address so that I can have it.
Okay. When you say you ordered one, how did you do that?
I went online and just put in the information I needed and just reordered it.
Okay. Do you think there's going to be any problem with you getting it?
No.
It's just a matter of getting it in hand.
Yeah,
okay. All right. So at that time you would have a job.
Yes.
All right. So you don't have the financial means at this point to go get independent housing anywhere. All right. Has the department pushed you to move into any particular place?
They just told me to call around to the Oxford House and different places to see if I could possibly stay there until I started working.
Okay, and what do you know about Oxford House?
Not much.
Okay, do you know if you'd have to put any money down?
I know there's $150 like to get in.
And then how much is it a week if you know?
It's like 150.
Okay, and do you have the means to do that right now? Okay, and you're not asking or wanting to ask your mom or any of your family members for that kind of money?
No.
Okay, do they all have families, responsibilities that they have to pay for? Okay, all right. In terms of your getting out, you had expected to get your violation case wound up a lot quicker than it was, had you not? Okay, and you didn't have any control over how long that took.
No.
All right. And you had another attorney for that.
Yes.
All right, and so was the outcome of that case that your probation was reinstated?
Yes.
And so, how long are you on probation?
For 10 years.
All right, and what was your violation?
Just wasn't reporting.
Okay. And you understand how important that is?
Yes.
Okay. And as part of your release, were you put on an ankle monitor?
Yes.
All right. So your probation officer knows where you are just by pushing the right buttons on her computer. Okay. And what is your curfew?
At 11.
11 p.m. in the evening?
In the evening, yes.
All right. And then what time are you free to leave?
At 6 a.m.
Okay. And did you notify your probation officer where you were staying this past week to 10 days?
Yes.
Okay. And she was okay with that?
Yes.
All right. So is it a pretty easy process for you to work with her and communicate with her what your situation is?
Yes.
And is she aware of what's going on with this hearing and with your CPS case?
Yes, she is.
All right. And has she given you any instructions about what you should do in terms of working with her versus working with CPS?
She just tells me to keep in contact with her and let her give her updates of what's going on.
Okay. Are you going to be required to do any classes or meetings or anything like that through probation?
I think so. I'll do my initial intake tomorrow.
Okay. So this one, you've just checked in with her when you were released, and then you have a more formal meeting tomorrow. All right. Very good.
That's what it sounds like, though. I'm sorry.
That's all right. What level of supervision are you on?
Intense supervision.
And what does that mean?
There's weekly drug test, and I wear the ankle monitor for 6 months.
Okay. And how often do you have to report?
Every week.
All right. And have you done any drug tests with them yet, or will that be something you start tomorrow?
Yeah, something to start.
Okay. All right. Now, let's just talk about what you've done for the department at this point. Have you been in contact with Ms. Branch?
Yes.
And what have those contacts been?
Just getting set up parenting classes and trying to get with the counselor and stuff and get that stuff set up.
Okay. And have you done that with her directly? Between you and her?
Mhm.
Okay. And have you done anything to sign up for any more parenting classes?
I signed up for the parent cottage, and that's about it so far.
All right. And what was the response from the parenting cottage?
They told me it was a waiting list and that they will give me a call in October.
Okay. But you don't know when in October?
No.
All right. And I'm talking about parenting. Did you do any parenting while you were incarcerated?
Yes, I completed some packets they gave me.
Do you know how many times they sent you packets?
Just once.
Just once. All right. And you had to read some information and write something about what you got out of those sessions? Okay. And you did that. All right. Was there anything else available to you while you were incarcerated?
Just the AA classes.
Did you go to AA meetings? Okay. And how often were those held?
Every other Saturday.
Okay. And since you've been out, did St. Francis send you for any drug tests?
Yes.
Has anyone other than me told you what those results were?
No.
Okay. Did you expect to be clean?
Yes.
And do you believe you were?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know what counselor you're going to be set up with?
I don't remember his name.
Okay. Would it have been Richard Gatlin?
I'm not too sure.
Okay. All right. And what other things did Ms. Branch tell you that you would be doing?
Fatherhood on Fire. That's about it.
Okay. Are you supposed to call these people, or are you waiting for referrals from them?
From now.
Okay. So you don't know if the paperwork has been submitted, because that's how they get paid. You understand that? Okay. Have you heard anything about whether those have been set up?
Yes, said they were gonna submit the payments, but they were just waiting on, see if he had an opening so I can get in and start them.
Okay. In terms of staying at your mother's home, is there a separate bedroom for you to stay in? Okay. Do you understand that if the judge allows this, that you will have to follow some pretty stringent rules?
Yes.
Do you understand you would likely be not allowed any unsupervised contact with Azalea at this point?
Yes.
It'd have to be your mom or one of her approved backup caregivers to supervise visits.
Yes.
Okay. Have you had any visits with Azalea?
Yes.
And when did you have a visit with Azalea?
That was on Thursday.
Okay. And was that at the St. Francis office?
I was at McDonald's.
Okay. And St. Francis supervised that visit?
Yes.
Okay. Is Azalea in daycare?
Yes.
Okay. And how long a visit did you have?
2 hours.
All right. And how did it go?
It went great.
Okay. Was it good to see her?
Yeah.
Do you believe that you can follow any rules that St. Francis sets out?
Yes, I can.
Do you believe your mom would be tough on you about following the rules?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes, she is.
Okay. All right. Do you feel that she's been very protective of Azalea and takes good care of her?
Yeah, she takes good care of her.
Okay. Do you have any concerns about Azalea in her home?
No?
Okay. Would you like the opportunity to be able to help your mom with some things with Azalea as long as you're supervised?
Yes.
Okay. Can you wash dishes?
Yes.
Can you do laundry?
Yes.
Can you sweep and mop?
Yes.
Okay. So those are things that would help your mom out too.
Yeah.
True. All right. And you know what we're asking for is a little unusual,
Yes.
but do you feel that it's important for you to be with Azalea?
Yes.
Okay. And why do you think that?
At least she gets to see one of her parents. It was hard being away from her for so long, and just being there. I mean, it will help her because my mom always tells me she asks about me. She always asking for her dad, wondering where her dad is. And, I mean, I'm here and I'm trying to do everything I can so I can be there for her and be the parent I need to be for her. And being there with her would just give me that extra motivation to continue to do right and do right by her.
Do you have any other children?
Yes, I have a son.
Okay. And you know, you kind of got yourself in this situation,
Yes.
but do you feel like you have learned from what's happened?
Yes, I have.
What have you learned?
Just to take care of my business and take care of my responsibilities as I should and not put things off to the last minute and think things are just going to go away by just over time. That, I mean, I just have to, because during the time, I mean, I worked at the bingo hall and stuff when she was little or when she was younger. I worked and I was the primary caregiver for her. I mean, I watched her day in and day out. When Desiree worked during the morning, I watched her all the way up until I went to work. Then when I got off of work, I watched her. I mean, I've always taken care of her. I mean, until I went to jail and left her in her mother's care, that's when all this came about. But anything before that, I mean, she was okay. She was clean. She had everything she needed. I mean, I cooked for her. I mean, I did a lot. I mean, I did everything for her. I mean,
But you understand you have to like you said,
Yeah,
take care of your own business
Mhm.
and do the right thing all the time, not
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
when you're with Azalea.
Yes.
Okay. And you think you're better prepared to do that now.
Yes.
Pass the witness.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Talk about her.
Mr. Dawson, let's back up just a little bit.
He's
You-
going to ask you questions.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was just telling him you're going to ask
I'm
him
sorry.
questions now.
Okay, yes. Mr. Dotson, you were charged with a felony possession back in March of 2021. Is that correct?
Yes.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Couldn't hear.
Yes. Yes.
And how was that case resolved? What was the final thing in terms of that matter to begin with?
They put me on deferred for 5 years.
You pled guilty to that charge. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at the time that you pled guilty to that, did you understand what a deferred sentence was?
Not at the time. I didn't.
Did you understand? I'm sorry, go ahead. Tell me what you did understand.
I just knew I was being put on probation. I didn't understand the first. I mean, I knew that it would. He said it wouldn't go on my record, but I
What
didn't
would you,
understand.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
what would you have to do to keep that from going on your record?
It's just, I guess, report, and that's about it.
And so that would not be something that would be overly difficult, would it?
No, sir.
Why didn't you report?
There was just at the time of my life, I was just dealing with a lot of things. I was staying at different places. It was just a hard time in my life. I was going through a divorce. When the case came about, I had just went through a divorce of someone I was with over 10 years. And I mean, I was depressed. I was dealing with a lot of stuff at the time.
Did you seek any help at that point in time from anyone?
And my mom, from time to time, I mean, we would talk and stuff, but
I'm talking
not,
about, you knew at the time that you were failing to follow the rules of probation, correct?
yes,
By failing to report.
yes.
And you also didn't pay the fees that were associated with your probation, did you?
No.
So when was, what's your child's birth date? What year?
22?
Not 21?
No, sir.
All right. So what happened as a result of your failing to report to your probation officer?
They put out a warrant and I was arrested.
And how was that revocation hearing handled?
They put me on a monitor for 6 months, attend supervision for a year, and then added 5 years to the probation.
They did something more severe than just add years to the probation, didn't they?
They adjudicated me and gave me the felony.
So now you're a convicted felon, correct?
Yes.
And that was as a result of simply not following the rules.
Yes.
And when did that conviction come about?
August 15th
Of what year?
of 23.
Okay. So during the time that since your daughter's birth and then you still didn't think about following the rules of probation until you were arrested. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
You stated when counsel was visiting with you here a moment ago, you said that you can follow rules, but in the past you haven't, have you?
No.
And so the things that you testified to here already this morning are things that you are going to try to take care of between now and when you get them accomplished as far as the CPS plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what have you learned? What have you learned regarding your overall situation where you are asking the court to be in the home of your child?
I'm not too sure I understand the question. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. What's different today than when you were on your earlier probation and you didn't follow the rules then? Why are we to believe that you will follow the rules now?
I mean, I've grown up a lot. Just seeing how the things that I've done and the things that I have to, like the consequences of the things that I have done. And I'm just trying to be better, just all around, just not make the same mistake I did the first time.
And I hope you're successful, but you see what I'm saying is that you still have all of these things yet to do to show us that you can be successful, correct?
Yes.
You're asking the court to place you in the home of your mom. Isn't one of your requirements from CPS is to obtain your own home, your own place to live?
Yes, that's something that I plan on doing. But just with this monitor and stuff, I can't just be here, there, and all these other places. I have to have a set zone to where I have to be in.
I understand, and that's the point I'm trying to make, is that you still have those things to accomplish. You haven't accomplished a stable home for yourself, and certainly not for yourself and your daughter, have you?
I mean, I've only been out for a week.
I know, and I think you've now finally hit what
I've
I'm
only been
trying
out
to
for a
say to
week.
you, Mr. Dodson. You still have all of these things to accomplish, and you're telling this court that you're going to do all of these things. But would you agree that your past history has shown that you don't follow the rules, and that's why you were revoked and given a conviction for possession? Is that correct?
Yes, but this time I'm asking for help. I'm not trying to just veer off on my own and do my own thing. I'm asking for help because I need
I
help.
understand. And hasn't CPS, Brianna, and the others tried to help you as you've gone through this process?
I mean, with the housing, I mean, the money, I don't have the money to put up to be able to live in these places. I mean, the Salvation Armies, I mean, that's a what if, the day thing, the open door, that's a day shelter, maybe. I mean, just my probation officer's not gonna allow that. She's not gonna allow me to be at these different places, which that's gonna violate my probation. And I may end up going to prison when I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to be more productive. I'm trying to do all these things that they're asking of me, but I'm not getting any help on that end with money wise. Cause I mean, my mom, anything she makes, anything she has, tell her to take care of my daughter. I mean, if she can help.
And how are you without a job going to help take care of your daughter?
I'm waiting on my ID and stuff to come in so I can get that stuff taken care of.
Have you ever had
a
a driver's license?
No, that's something that we were going to set up. So my mom was going to set up for me so I can go take a test and get that taken care of. But I've had an ID. It just was lost and I just had to get a replacement.
Okay, well, let's back up because I thought I heard you testify earlier that you were getting a driver's license, that you just had to make an application for it.
No, the application was for the ID. I had to set up for the driver's license. I had to go set up and take my test.
And so after that, you have to go through testing and do all of those things that are necessary to get a driver's license.
Yes, but with the ID, I can go ahead and I can start a job. Yeah.
And so again, it's something you're looking to do in the future. When did you know that you were going to be released from incarceration?
I didn't know until August 15th when we went to court.
Okay. And how long had you been incarcerated?
Since February 9th.
And you said that let me have you say it again. What did you do that CPS asked you to do?
I mean, they asked me to set up the parenting classes, try to get into parenting classes. And I registered for the ones at the parent cottage. They asked me to do the drug test. I've done the drug test. The other things that they're asking, I'm just waiting to hear back on when I need to start them. And that's it.
What specifically have you done besides the parenting classes? Anything?
I've tried to set up and then get my ID so I can start working so I can.
When did you
do some of the things they ask?
When did you start trying to set up to get your ID and your driver's license?
That was last week. That was last week after Tuesday? Well, Wednesday.
Why didn't you look into it when you were sitting there incarcerated for all of those months?
I didn't know at the time. I didn't know how to go about it in being incarcerated on getting my ID and stuff.
When did you start that process?
When I got out on the 14th. That weekend, after that weekend, that following week, I started trying to get my ID.
When did you first make contact with CPS after you were released?
That day.
The day you were released?
Yes.
And you met with Brianna?
Yes.
And what did she ask you to do at that time?
I'm going to object to ask and answered already.
Okay.
Sustain.
It's all pass in this witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Hudman?
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Dotson, when the events happened that gave rise to Azalea being removed and being placed in CPS care and then with your mother, were you present for that?
No,
And I know that was a
No,
very
ma'am.
convoluted way to ask that question. But did you have anything to do with what happened that got Azalea removed?
no, ma'am.
And has with regards to you talked about the things that you did while you were at the Lubbock County Detention Center. Were there any other services available that you did not do, or did you do everything that was available to you there?
That was available. I mean, besides trying to get into the other pod to where I can take more parenting classes, but it never sent me over there.
And you don't have control. You didn't have control over that. Is that correct?
No, I don't.
Were you when they filed a motion to when they filed to revoke your probation, was it because of failed drug tests?
No, it was just I wasn't reporting.
Okay. And Oxford House, is that a sober living facility?
Oh, yes.
And how long have you been abstinent from drugs?
What, say almost let's say like a year.
Is your testimony that you were not using drugs immediately prior to going into jail?
Oh, yes.
So when you were last living in the free world, you were clean and sober at that time?
Oh, yes.
And then why do you think that they want you to go live at a sober living facility?
Because I have nowhere else to go. I have nowhere else to live. And that's the only other option that they're giving me.
But isn't it also true that they suggested the Salvation Army?
Yes.
Now, other than that being against your probation, is that a reasonable solution in your opinion?
No.
Did St. Francis tell you that they would help you find housing?
Yes.
And did they in fact help you find housing?
Not as of right now. They tell me to keep calling these places and trying to talk to these people and see if they can get me in or not.
But these places meaning sober living facilities, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Have they given you any resources for low income housing?
No.
So their solution was sober living or Salvation Army, correct?
Yes.
Have they discussed with you what a safety plan is?
Yes.
Have you had any discussions with St. Francis about a safety plan that's put in place that would allow you to stay in your mother's home?
Yes.
And what would the conditions of that plan be?
They just spoke of the safety plan. They haven't spoke of the actual conditions on which I would have to abide by. They just said that they would have to come up with the safety plan if that was the case, if I was able to move back into the home.
Okay. Are you currently under a safety plan since you have spent some nights in your mother's home?
Basically that Zayla can't be there when I'm present.
Okay. Have you followed that?
Yes,
Did you sign a safety plan to that effect, or was that just what they told you?
that's just what I was told.
Okay. Have you gone above and beyond to, or have you taken great attempts and strides to make sure that your mom and Azalea could stay in their home as much as possible?
Yes,
And you testified earlier that that included staying at a hotel on several nights. Is that correct?
yes,
Did St. Francis offer to help pay for that hotel?
no.
Do you know approximately how long it'll take for you to get your ID in?
It'll be about a week.
Okay.
Should be about a week.
A week from when you applied or a week from now?
A week. Yeah, a week from now.
Okay. Now, let's talk about your mom for a little bit.
Okay.
How would you describe Miss Armstead when it comes to following rules?
She's all about following the rules. She wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, if her rules are,
Is she strict?
Yeah, she's strict. She's requiring me, for me to move into her home, she's requiring me to pay bills and help her around doing other things that she asked me to do.
Okay. And is that something that you are willing to do, or is that not something you're willing to do?
Oh, that's something I'm willing to do.
Okay. Prior to your incarceration and prior to this case starting, was Miss Armstead a frequent caregiver of Azalea?
No, I say no. Only at times. I mean, if we've been to the store, she would watch her or something like that. But most of the time, it was me caring for her.
Okay. When you had your visit at McDonald's, did Azalea seem well cared for?
Yeah, she's well taken care of.
And do you think that Azalea is where she needs to be for right now?
So yes.
And if talking about your mom as being a rule follower, what does she do for a living?
She works at I forget what the place is. It's like she sets up patients for different tests they have to take.
Okay. If you, knowing your mom the way you do, if you weren't following the rules, what do you expect that she would make you do?
She'll make me move out. She'll make me leave.
And knowing that that may affect your probation, would she still make you leave?
Yes.
And do you have any reason to think that she would put your desires above Azalea's needs?
I mean,
and let me ask that better. In your opinion, who is your mom's number one person that she is going to protect right now?
Zayla.
Okay. And do you think that that's the way it should be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, if you were allowed to move into your mother's home, where does Azalea sleep?
See, her crib is in my mom's room.
Okay. And And does Azalea go to daycare?
Yeah, she goes to daycare.
Okay. And when Azalea is not at daycare, who is she with?
With my mom.
Okay. And your mom has managed that schedule since March of this year, correct?
Yes.
And do you believe she can continue to manage that schedule whether or not you were there or not?
Yes.
I mean, she doesn't need your help to take care of Azalea. Is that correct?
I mean, she can say she does because she has to do these infusions and stuff with her health. I mean, sometimes she doesn't take her medication so she can, do everything she needs to do for Azalea. So, I mean, with me being there, she's able to do those things that she needs to do for her health so that, I mean, she can take care of take care of her health with the things that she hasn't been able to do.
So with you being there, would you be able to take up some of the slack so that your mom can better care for herself and Azalea?
Yes.
And what job do you have what job do you have waiting for you when you get your ID?
So Jomar,
And what kind of work is that?
electrical work.
Okay. You stated that you're on an ankle monitor for 6 months, correct?
Yes.
And so since you've been out and have you remained in constant contact with your probation officer?
Yes, I have.
And you were also on weekly drug tests, correct?
Correct.
And you testified before that you didn't have any reason to be concerned about last week's drug test, correct?
Yes.
Has St. Francis told you what the results of that was?
Oh.
They've not? Okay. I'll need to pass the witness.
Ms. Mason.
Hey, Mr. Dotson, you said you had a son. How old is he?
11.
Okay. Have you ever been involved with CPS prior to this current case before the court?
No.
Okay. Would you be agreeable to signing some sort of release of information so Ms. Branch could contact your probation officer and even get the drug test results if you're testing on a weekly basis?
Yes.
Okay. And then as far as the drug test that you took for CPS when you were released, was that both a UA and hair follicle?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And how long have you been out of jail at this point?
Since the 14th of this month.
Okay. And during that time, has your mom allowed any sort of unsupervised contact with your daughter?
No.
Prior to y'all coming up with any sort of solution about where you'd be staying, did you receive prior approval from Ms. Branch?
Yes.
Okay. Have you received a family plan of service? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay. Have you received a family plan of service from Ms. Branch?
Not yet.
Okay. Have you been provided any sort of documents to outline specifically what services the department is requesting that you complete?
No, I've just been told what the things they were asking.
Okay. Would it be helpful for you to actually get documentation showing what services you need to complete, including where the phone numbers for example, your counselor, the phone number for him and so forth?
Yes.
Okay. When did you let CPS know that you had been released from incarceration?
The day that I got out.
Okay. So about 11 days ago?
Yes.
Okay. And are you saying in those 11 days you haven't been provided a family plan of service?
No.
Okay. Is your long-term goal to live with your mom for the rest of your days?
No.
Okay. Are you just wanting to remain there temporarily until you can actually get on your feet?
Yes.
And one of the Okay, and two of the requirements from CPS is that you have stable housing and a stable job. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. In order for you to accomplish those things, do you just need a little bit of time?
Yeah, a little time and help.
Is you having to pay for a hotel or having to go stay at the Oxford House for about $150 a week, would that allow you to save money in order to get your own place?
Yes.
That would allow you to do that. If you're having to spend $150 a week of your money, with that, does that make it more difficult for you to obtain your own house?
Yes.
As far as where Azalea sleeps, is the crib right by your mom's bed?
Yes, it's right by her bed.
To your knowledge, does your mom have a lock on her room, on the door?
Yes.
Okay. Would she be able at nighttime, if she's sleeping and Azalea sleeping, to ensure that you're not going in there at night? Does she have the ability to lock that door?
Yes, she does.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Edley?
Just a couple of follow-ups, Your Honor. Preston, do you recall that back in April, while you were incarcerated, you did get a service plan, but most of it were things that you were not able to do at that time? Okay, so when you're talking about not having a plan, you don't have an updated plan to guide you since you've been out? Okay, and you need the specifics about what counselor they want you to see it and that kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay, so those are the things that we're waiting to get.
Yes.
Okay. Are you sure about a lock on the bedroom door, or is it a door that closes?
No, it's a lock on the door.
Okay. Has a little button on it she can push?
Twisted. I think it's a twist.
Okay, we can clear that up with your mom. Okay. I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Mitchell?
Just a couple more questions, Your Honor. Mr. Dawson, I'd like to clear up something, make sure I heard it correctly. If you were to be back in the home, what is your contact with Azalea at that point?
I mean, what they're saying is, no unsupervised visits. Basically, some of my mom is present anytime she's around.
When your mom goes to work, what's the situation that occurs then?
Azalea goes to daycare.
Okay, what daycare does Azalea go to?
I'm not too sure.
Why haven't you inquired about where she's going to daycare if that's going to be an important aspect of you
I
being
just don't remember. I can't remember the name of it right now. I just can't remember the name of it as right now.
And who takes her to daycare?
My mother.
And who picks her up?
My mother.
So if your mother, let me strike that question. You did get a family plan of service when this thing first began, did you not?
Oh, yes.
All right. And what were you ordered to do then?
I was incarcerated at the time.
Judge, I'm going to object to this as it's not relevant to today's proceedings.
Sustained, and I think we've been through it a little bit, so let's just move on.
Why is it important, Mr. Dawson, or why is there going to be a lock on the door there at that house?
That's something that they're requiring. That's something that, that's if they require that. It's
okay. They are requiring it, or if they require it? Because you said there would be a lock on the door, and now you say if they require it.
No, they asked if there was a lock on the door, if there was a need to have to lock the door to keep me from coming in there. They were just asking if there was a lock on the door.
Who is they?
Oh, Katie, she asked if there was a lock on my mother's bedroom door.
Miss Mason asked you?
Yeah.
Okay. Not probation?
No.
And not CPS?
No.
If I may have just one second, Your Honor. The night that you stayed at the hotel, your brother paid for that. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Hudman,
No question, Judge.
Ms. Mason,
Nothing additional.
Ms. Eveline.
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Next witness, Ms. Eveline.
Donna Armstead. Ms. Armstead, I'm going to start by asking you first, did you provide me with some photographs of your home?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
All right. And before we go any farther, you are the paternal grandmother of Azalea, and you have an approved home study, and you've had placement of her since early on in this case. Is that all true?
Yes, ma'am.
And are the photographs that you sent me photographs that you took?
Yes, ma'am.
And do they represent the conditions and state of your home at the time that you sent those to me over the weekend?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so they're true and correct depictions of your home.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Your Honor, I have sent 13 photographs to the attorneys, and I would ask if those could be admitted.
No objection.
Objection.
Your Honor, I object to the interest photos simply because they're not relevant to the hearing that's taking place today. The department has no concerns about Ms. Armstead and the condition of her home.
Well, Your Honor, I would contend that some of the photographs certainly do show things that Mr. Dodson has testified to and things I believe Ms. Armstead will also testify to.
Okay, overruled. Respondent fathers 1 through 13 will be admitted.
And I'll email those. I'll forward those to you, Your Honor.
Okay, however, it does sound like Mr. Mitchell is willing to concede on some points. So if we can clarify the issue, or not clarify, but zero in on the issue, that would be good.
As to what he's objecting to?
No, as it sounded like Mr. Mitchell was willing to concede on as far as the safety of the home and the cleanliness of the home and all of that. So
That is correct, Your Honor.
okay, hopefully we can zero in on the main issue then.
All right, Donna, I marked 2 of the photographs, the 5th one and the 9th one. I don't have numbers on the photographs, but they would appear to be pictures of of a room with a bed and a crib in it. Do you recall seeing those pictures?
Yes, ma'am. That is my master bedroom.
And is that the room where you sleep?
That is the room where I sleep and also Azalea sleeps.
And does she sleep in the crib?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you also sent another photograph that is the next to the last, and so I'm calling it Respondents 11. That is another bedroom that appeared to have a coverlet with Eiffel Tower on it. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am. That is my guest room.
And is that the room where Preston would be?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that separate and apart from your master bedroom and from the room where the crib is?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Your Honor, I'd certainly ask for the 5th, the 9th, and the 11th photographs to be admitted.
I admitted all of them.
Okay. I wasn't clear. Preston testified about a lock on the door. Can you describe what there might be on that door?
It's the standard door lock. It's not a deadbolt. It's not anything that I've put on the door. It's just a standard door lock when the house was built.
Okay, and how does it work?
By twisting from the inside.
Okay, it doesn't have a button on it that you push?
No, it's a twist.
Okay.
Twist
Okay,
door.
so you push it in and turn it, and that locks it.
Yes, ma'am. That secures the
And
door.
Okay, all right. Do you feel that there's any need to protect yourself and Azalea when y'all are in that room from Preston?
That's one of the things I'm sorry that I've been concerned about. I didn't understand the question of having a lock. If that is part of the requirements that I lock my door every night to protect myself and Azalea, I didn't know there was a need for that. But if that is a requirement for whatever reason, I'm okay with that. There has not been anything aggravated or hostile or anything like that. But if that is a requirement, the door is equipped to be locked.
Okay. Do you have any fear of Preston causing
ma'am.
harm to you or to Azalea?
No, ma'am.
Okay. you are asking that that Preston be allowed to move into your home, true?
Yes, ma'am.
And you understand St. Francis and or the court would put conditions in place to assure Azalea's safety, true?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And just for yourself, Preston described you as strict. Would you agree that you're a rule follower?
I am.
Okay. Would you put Preston's needs above Azalea's, or
No,
is
ma'am.
Azalea your top priority?
She is my top priority.
And when was Azalea actually placed with you?
March 21st.
Of 2023?
Pardon me?
Of 2023?
Yes, ma'am.
Has anyone, Miss Mason, St. Francis, anyone with St. Francis, complained about anything about your care of Azalea?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Have you had any help from St. Francis, financially or otherwise, in taking care of Azalea, or have you met all of her needs?
I've had a lot of great help from St. Francis because this is my first time ever being in a CPS case. So there's lots of information and questions and guidelines and bylaws and things that I don't understand. And I know that Brianna gets a lot of calls from me, and she's Azalea's caseworker. But I also reach out to Lachey, who is my kinship caseworker. So I know I ask a lot of questions, but it's only because this is the first time I've ever had to experience taking care of a grandchild in the absence of both parents.
Okay, and you understand that not following the rules could result in Azalea being removed from your home.
Yes, ma'am.
And is that part of the reason you ask a lot of questions, is so that you know everything you are supposed to do and know about this process?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you feel that what would you expect of Preston, just as the owner of the home and the caretaker of Azalea? What do you expect of Preston if he's allowed to move into your home?
He will assist me in the home. Right now, I am the single person in the home. And so therefore there are certain things that I would like and require of Preston. Number one, he has to have a job. Number two, he has to abide by CPS rules. But number one, he has to abide by my rules because that's my house. There are things that I will not permit. Azalea and I leave the house at 8 o'clock in the morning on the weekends. I work 8 to 5. On the weekends, I'm home. And there may be times with Preston's job that he has to be out of town on the weekends. But I never work on weekends. So there's supervision for Azalea, either when she's there 8 to 5 or after 5 o'clock when I pick her up from daycare. So if that is a concern of unsupervised, I've learned to take her and how to prepare when I'm taking her with me to this place and that place as well. So is church. So trying to lay a foundation, I will not allow Preston to come in and change up what I've worked so hard with her to do. And so the answer to your question is no, she's number one priority. And I will abide by any rules that the judge set, whatever time frame she sets, whatever time frame that St. Francis. I understand that they have concerns as well.
The worst case, if he violates your rules or you find out he's violating CPS's rules, what happens to Preston as far as you're concerned?
Preston will be asked to leave my house.
Okay. Do you have a good relationship with Preston in terms of,
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
feel he respects you? You feel he respects you?
Yes, ma'am. I can
Okay.
honestly say that now.
Okay. And in terms of other things you might want him to do around the house, what would he be expected to do when he is there?
He will have to cut the yard. He'll maintain the yard. If there's any other household duties that I will require, I'm not the maid. I will not pick up. I will not do his laundry. He will have responsibilities there. He's just not coming in to camp hotel. He's coming in to help me maintain and do the things that I need to do, but also develop reiterating with his child as well. He's been away from her for 7 months, and I want to monitor the way that he interacts with her. And if there's any resistance on her behalf, he has to understand he put himself in that situation and took himself out of her life for 7 months.
Okay, thank you. Talk about the health situation that Preston made reference to and you've talked about, and how he fits into that.
I've
If
been
he does.
diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis 3 years ago. I take IV infusion medication. That medication is a chemo drug. And even though I've been on it for 3 years, sometimes there's little bit of nausea, there's a little bit of fatigue. And so with that, I've postponed some of my appointments, which my doctor has given me a supplement medication to take during that time. So I feel that I can continue to take that supplement med, but it doesn't work as well as my IV infusion.
And do you do the infusions at home or do you go to an infusion center?
I have to go to a facility for the infusions, and they're
And how
every
often do
8 weeks.
Okay, I think that was my next question. And so then how often would you take the supplement
I take
instead?
that daily.
Okay. Have those, has that condition and those treatments prevented you from meeting Azalee's needs and taking care of her?
No, ma'am, that was the reason why I suggested to my physician that I need an alternative medicine that wasn't as severe as taking a chemo med, that I could take an alternative med. And so that I can provide and do the things that I needed to do to her. Has it limited my mobility? Has it limited my awareness? Has it limited any of those capabilities? No, ma'am. I continue. I may move a little slower some days because she is almost 2, so she runs a lot. So I'm not as fast as I used to be at 25, but we do our best.
Okay. And you're able to keep up with her even if it is a little bit slow. She doesn't get away from you, or you lose control of her.
She has become very well disciplined. If I say no, stop running, she knows to stop running.
Okay. And who are your backup caregivers when you do need someone to either give you some respite or even this past week to let you come stay at their home?
My son and his wife.
Okay. And do they have?
I'm sorry, and Brianna and Lachey has given me, I think there is some support groups. I haven't been able to attend any of those just yet, but I do appreciate them giving me those, that there is another resource for me to have some downtime and talk with other foster parents.
Okay. But in terms of giving you any kind of assistance, your son and his wife can keep Azalee with them without you being there. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
They've been approved through St. Francis and CPS.
Okay. Is there anyone else, or are they the main ones?
That's it, ma'am.
All right. And do they have any children?
They do. They have a 1-year-old, a daughter.
All right. And is that one reason they could not be a temporary residence for Preston?
Yes, ma'am, because there's also a possibility that she's pregnant again.
Okay.
And I don't want to put all that pressure on them, but they're there if I need them.
But they're not there to be permanent caregivers for Azalee?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And what do you do?
I'm an administrative assistant for Lubbock Bone and Ultrasound.
And what do you do in your job?
I assist patients with ultrasound. I also schedule patients for treatment and referrals.
Okay. Very responsible position.
Yes, ma'am.
And how long have you worked there?
I've worked there for 2 years. Prior to that, I retired from Covenant Medical Center after 27 years in the Covenant ER.
What did you do in the ER?
In the ER, I was the doctor's medical assistant.
Okay.
And then I moved to the administration for nursing services.
Do you believe that you are fully able to continue to provide the level of and quality of care that you've provided to Azalee, even if Preston moves into your home?
Yes, ma'am. By the grace of God. Yes, ma'am.
All right, pass the witness.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Armstead, you do sound like quite the caregiver. And I think
thank you, sir.
Doing a great job with Azalee. But I want to visit with you about what you're asking to have happen.
Okay. I can barely hear you, Mr. Mitchell. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'll speak up. You've been here in this virtual courtroom throughout, and you've heard what Mr. Dotson has had to say about his past. And were you involved with him closely when he was first charged with the possession of drugs?
No, ma'am. I'm sorry. I'm
That's
so
okay.
sorry.
I have a high voice.
Your Honor, I'm gonna
No, not as closely, not as closely. He didn't live in my household at that time due to the drugs. I didn't interact with him too much then. There was occasions that I did have to, but I say have to, but he is my child. And even though he had an addiction, the love for a parent, you don't stop loving a child just because of that. But yeah.
Well, you mentioned just then that he had lived with you in the past. Can you tell me when that was?
He lived with me. Now, let my memory get better.
Lots of time.
I had a stroke 6 years ago, so let me. Some of the memories, okay. Preston, well, besides living with me until he graduated high school, he came back to live with me, both he and Desiree, after the baby was born. After the baby was born, I made the trip to Roswell, New Mexico, and brought the two of them back. That was not my intent. But when I arrived there, he asked if I could bring them back. I gave him stipulations. I gave them rules, and they didn't abide by those rules at first. And I think he thought I was being a little harsh. But once again, you have to live by the rules of where you are dwelling. So if he didn't like my rules, he had to leave. And so he did stay with me. They did stay with me up until the time Azalea was, oh, I'm sorry. I can't remember how old she was when they left.
During this time that he and the mother lived in your home, was he working?
Yes, sir.
What was he doing at that time?
objection
was
to
working-
relevance.
Say again,
I'm going to object to relevance.
sustain.
When he lived there at your home, did you know if he was on probation?
I believe when he went on probation, I'm sorry, I even forget your name. When he went on probation, yes, I was aware that he went on probation.
Did you ever talk with him about whether he was following their rules?
I did ask him what he was doing with as far as his probation. And like I say, all this legal stuff is all new to me. Never had any reason to know about probation and whatever they talked about education and all that stuff. But yes, I was aware that he was on probation. As far as being involved in his probation, I wasn't. He was an adult male.
Okay, and so were you surprised when that probation was revoked?
Objection, relevance.
Sustain.
Did you know his probation had been revoked?
I attended court with him that day.
Do you think Mr. Dotson would benefit from the services that are being offered and required by CPS?
Yes, some of the outline programs that they have, that he's mentioned to me and that Bree has mentioned to me, I believe because he hasn't had those resources and didn't choose those resources before or didn't even know they were available, he could benefit from them. St. Francis, just from the things that Bree has told me that they are offering him during this time. I'm sorry, that's Brianna Branch. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We all know, I think, who you're speaking of. I will pass this witness, Your Honor.
You said you passed?
Yes, Your Honor. Sorry.
Okay, Ms. Hudman?
Thank you, Judge. Ma'am, was there, you stated that you've got a good relationship with St. Francis and with Brianna, correct?
Yes, ma'am, with both of my kinship, Lachey also. We talk frequently.
Okay. And have they asked you to do anything or required you to do anything that you have not complied with?
Yes, the day that Preston was released, I let Bree know that I was going to pick him up. Azalea was home with a fever and I was taking her with her, and she said I had to take her back to daycare, and I told her I couldn't, but she understood and talked with her supervisor, and Miss Caranda approved that it was okay that day and they would consider that a visit. But as far as not complying with any of their rules, no, ma'am.
So in fact, you've gone above and beyond to comply with their rules. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you didn't try to be sneaky about just going to pick him up and
No,
anything like that, right?
no, ma'am. Like I said, I believe that I followed their rules, and I'll continue to ask questions to make sure that I'm within the guidelines that they've set out before me.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Pass the witness.
Thank you.
Ms. Mason?
Just really briefly, Donna, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, great. I was asking about the locks, and I didn't mean to insinuate that Preston would be breaking into your room at all, but if that's something that CPS is requiring you to do or part of a safety plan, you're more than willing to comply with whatever they're asking, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Wouldn't understand why, because his offense was not an aggravated offense, but
Right.
if it's about safety, I'm all for safety for Azalea.
Okay, and your son's never been violent or anything like that, correct?
No, ma'am. And like
Okay.
I said, his charges that he was convicted of was drugs, not
Okay.
aggravated rape, not sexual assault, not pedophile. I don't understand some of the guidelines, but for the safety of my granddaughter, I'll do whatever is necessary.
Okay, and would it actually be beneficial for you and your health to have your son around to kind of pick up on?
Yes.
Okay.
To
All right.
have an extra set of hands and an extra set of legs to help run after her as she continues to grow up and get exquisite about what's this and what's that, and making sure that I try to keep things put up away from her. But sometimes these little kids can find things that I have equipped my house accordingly to their rules.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Okay, anything else for Ms. Armstead?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor. And for the record, I did email the exhibits to you
Yes, I saw those.
and copied the attorneys.
Okay, next witness, Ms. Eveline?
We'd rest at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, Your Honor. We would call Brianna Brianna Branch to testify. How long have you been involved with this case, Brianna?
Since March 21st, 2023.
I'd like to back up, and if you could, for the court, would you tell us how Azalea is doing in her current placement?
Azalea's doing very well with Miss Armstead. She is well behaved. She's speaking very clear. She appears to be very happy every home visit I do.
When was the last time you had a chance to see her?
September 14th, 2023.
That's about the date that we're talking about that created the situation when Mr. Dotson was released. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
When for the record as well, what is Azalea's birth date?
It is October 22nd, 2021.
Okay, and you have been involved since the removal in this case?
Yes, sir.
Was there involvement in this matter before the department started the removal process?
No, sir.
So you've had this case from the very beginning?
Yes, sir.
What concerns do you have regarding Mr. Dotson's request to be placed into the same home with Azalea?
My concerns outlie of unknown drug use prior to his incarceration. He did submit a UAN hair follicle and came out negative. I'm also concerned with Mr. Dotson being self-sufficient. And then Mr. Dotson concerns about him remaining in the sober community.
When you say concerns about him being self-sufficient, can you elaborate on your concerns?
Yes, it is required by Mr. Dotson on his family plan of service, both copies for him to maintain and obtain stable income and housing.
So he testified here today he plans on doing all of those things, but he hasn't done those things yet. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And has CPS, you personally, been available to work with him to help find him the resources that he needs?
Yes, sir. By helping with housing, we usually assist. We'll sit down with our parents and we'll look at apartments. At this point, with his lack of funds, we did think the best option would be sober living, because not only would it be an environment free of risk for himself, it also would surround him in a sober community as well.
Where would sober living accommodations be available?
They do offer information packets in jail where they can contact sober living ahead of time before being released. I also had my parent support worker look up several different options of places, and she even knew of one that would work with fathers who didn't have income at the time.
I'm sorry, did I hear some objection? I heard a noise. Maybe I didn't hear anybody speaking. I'll go ahead and go forward. So to your knowledge, did Mr. Dotson seek out those places that you all have talked with him about or advised him that might be available?
After Mr. Dotson was released, he had informed me of
Actually
making
non-responsive.
Sustained.
I apologize. I did not hear, but I see Katie.
She objected to non-responsive, and I sustained.
Okay, thank you. You heard Miss Armstead testify here, and she mentioned that there was a time when Mr. Dotson lived in her home after Azalea was born. Do you know when that was?
I want to say it was either late 2022 or early 2023.
And did Miss Armstead and you have any conversations about the conditions or the circumstances with him being in the home?
Yes, sir.
And what do you recall her specifically telling you as far as his taking up residency there?
Objection, hearsay.
Your Honor, the witness is there to be cross-examined.
And Your Honor, he could have asked those questions to Ms. Armstead when she was on the stand, but she's not a party to the case.
I'm going to overrule for other reasons. Go ahead.
What discussions did you have with Ms. Armstead about Mr. Dotson living there?
That Mr. Dotson had resided in the home with Miss Vallejos, and that during that time she did have some troubles with them being there. One was Miss Vallejos using drugs outside the home in the residence. And then the other one was them going periods without working and them keeping Azalea in the room the entire time or most of the day when they did reside with Miss Armstead.
Did she tell you why that concerned her?
Mrs. Armstead is very proactive with interacting with Azalea and making sure she is prepped for her future and stuff. So she was concerned they were not interacting with her in ways that were productive for her growth.
Did she tell you whether she engaged in conversations with Mr. Dotson or the mother at that time about what they should do?
Miss Armstead did state that she did engage in conversations with Mr. Dotson.
How important is it, as in your world, is it that someone becomes self-sufficient?
When it comes to parents, since the parents are the legal and primary caregivers of our children, the children will, once the parents have the children with them again, the children will have to rely on said parents 100% of the time. We never know if emergencies can happen with other family members or help if it's not going to be available at the time. So parents need to be able to care for their children fully and completely 100% of the time.
All the testimony that's been, or that I've heard here today, has been about what needs to be done to assist Mr. Dotson getting back on his feet, and CPS is willing to do that and is helping him to do that. Is that correct?
We are trying to help him to the best of our ability.
Do you foresee any issues, or how do you see interaction between Mr. Dotson and Azalea before he's had an opportunity to engage in any services?
His interactions have been positive with Azalea. I have seen them in person together, and she was all smiles and he was all smiles. So
that was during a supervised visitation schedule, correct?
It was actually when he was released on September 14th. We went ahead and let him have visitation since she had been sick and Miss Armstead was in a bind with taking her to daycare. It was approved that he was interacting with her throughout that day. And I saw them that evening.
Is there a visitation schedule? Has a visitation schedule been put together for his visitation going down the road?
He will get twice a week for 2 hours a week for now.
And where would that visitation and under what conditions would that take place?
The visits will occur at one of our approved locations, and it will be conducted by a visitation monitor or family support worker.
I'll pass this witness at this time, Your Honor.
Ms. Eveline?
Reference Branch, you mentioned a negative drug test. Was that just this week that he submitted on September 19th?
Yes, ma'am. And I obtained those this morning.
Okay, and both the UA and the hair strand were negative?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when he was with Azalea on the 14th and Miss Armstead, did he do anything to threaten or endanger the child or Miss Armstead?
No, ma'am.
His interactions were completely appropriate with both of them?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Have you been to the home anytime this past week?
I was not this last week, but I believe, last in the home on this, I want to say the 17th. It was a week from last Friday.
17th, I believe, would have been a Sunday.
I went again after, I'm sorry about the date. I did go again after my initial visit with Mr. Preston.
Okay. And where did you see him?
I saw him at Miss Armstead's house.
Okay. And you heard Miss Armstead say that they've both, and Mr. Dodson as well, that they've both been in contact with you about the living situation and trying to be sure that they're following all the rules about him not being with Azalea and Mr. Armstead at this point. Is that correct?
That first day he was released, they have been in contact with me. We did have a couple of issues. I believe it was the 15th, where I was needing a plan before I could end my day, essentially. But they every time I've met with Mr. Dotson, one of the issues I brought up is that he needed to obtain housing. That was kind of like the first thing I would see him doing. So that first day when he was, or the second day when he was released on that 15th, we did have some issues with him complying, but he did get back in contact with me and he did meet with me later that day.
And you understand on day 2 after his release, that would be rather difficult, considering he also had to navigate this with his probation officer. True?
Yes, ma'am. I actually had spoken to his probation officer on the phone on September.
Non-responsive and hearsay.
Well,
Agreed.
sustained, but let's try to narrow the issue down a little bit.
And would you agree that the circumstances are very different now than they were when the parents may have been living together with Miss Armstead? The parents are not together at this time, true?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And there's been talk about the services for him to do now. And what have you tried to put in place this past week?
I have contacted Dr. Gatlin to see if he had any opens and availabilities. I had asked Mr. Dotson for an email address, and I was going to get him signed up for Firehood on Fire and then get the referral out for him to take his OZAR assessment as well. I have talked to him. I do need to present him his family plan of service, but we have talked and gone over all of his family plans, and he has met with our support workers as well.
All right. And what did you get from Mr. Gatlin?
I have not gotten a response from Mr. Gatlin, so I thought Mr. Gatlin would be well suited for Mr. Dotson, but I am going to contact other therapists at this time just to make sure he can get in as soon as possible.
And what is, just for the record, what is the process for the OSAR?
The OZAR is they will give Mr. Preston or Dotson a call, and he will take an assessment on the phone.
Okay. That you have to set that up or just make the referral?
I should make the referral, and then I believe, I'm going to double check on that, but I believe they will call him, but I was going to make sure I knew before I told Mr. Preston or Mr. Dotson to I was going to make sure of the communication so he was clear on it.
Okay, so that hasn't happened yet.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Pass witness.
Ms. Hudman?
Thank you. So did y'all put a safety plan in place regarding Mr. Dotson and Miss Armstead, and who would be staying where?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
After staffing the situation, it was seen that we wanted to see some more progress from Mr. Dotson in terms of being able to kind of be more self-sufficient in maintaining housing.
Ma'am, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking about in the last week and a half, 11 days, when you know that he's staying there some nights and she's staying there some nights. Did you put a safety plan in place regarding whether or not he was allowed to be there at any time? Things like that.
Your Honor, that's been asked and answered.
Not of this witness.
She just answered that question.
Overruled. I don't think so. I think she's thinking about a safety plan going forward. Ms. Hudman's thinking about a safety plan for the last week and a half.
Thank you, Judge. Yes.
Is that right, Ms. Hudman? Or am I?
Yes,
Okay.
Your Honor.
Okay, overruled.
No, ma'am.
Why not?
But we did discuss Azalea staying with the backup caregivers. It wasn't an official signed safety plan, but the discussion was Azalea just to stay with her backup caregivers.
You trusted Miss Armstead to follow the rules, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
And you, throughout the 7 months or so that you've been working with this family and Miss Armstead, she's been extremely proactive with you about what the rules are and to make sure she follows them, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so you really didn't have any reason to worry that Mr. Dotson would be staying the night or staying in the home with Azalea, did you?
I did have some concerns. The fact that we hadn't gotten a chance to, I did get the positive or the negative drug test results, but I didn't have a clear understanding of his drug past. I did not have a clear understanding of his compliance. Ms. Armstead has complied, but I haven't had much of a chance to work with Mr. Dotson yet.
Then why not get a signed safety plan?
I have staffed the situation with my supervisor and stuff, and at this time we wanted to see more progress, and we were
ma'am, but between the time that Mr. Dotson was released from Lubbock County to today, why didn't you have a signed safety plan if you were so concerned?
I'm sorry.
No, I interrupted you. I apologize.
At the time, I knew Miss Armstead would comply. I was not so sure of what Mr. Dotson would do, but I was sure that Mrs. Armstead would comply with us.
Okay. Recognizing that it's only been 11 days, has Mr. Dotson complied?
Yes.
And has Miss Armstead been protective and complied just as you expected her to do?
Well, there has been one thing Mr. Dotson has not complied with, and that was...
Could you answer the other question first about Miss Armstead?
Miss Armstead has complied, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. You told the Mr. Dotson, at least through his attorney, that St. Francis would help him secure housing, correct?
We would assist him in finding housing, yes, ma'am.
No, in fact, you said that you would help him get housing, correct?
Well, yes.
Okay.
But not
And is Salvation Army helping someone get housing?
I talked to yes, I do believe it is a shelter.
I do believe it is a shelter as well, but do you believe that that would, does that comply with St. Francis's family plan of service of safe and stable housing?
It is safe, yes, for now. We do understand that people don't obtain housing immediately. We have had other families work with the Salvation Army, and we do have resources that are connected to the Salvation Army, and it is meant to be a temporary shelter while people get on their feet, essentially.
Okay. What are the other resources connected to the Salvation Army that you have offered Mr. Dotson?
I know they have programs with apartments. They have assistance with helping people find food and stuff, or different food resources and different things. Our plan for Mr. Dotson was to sit down once he started working and figure out a budget for him to be what kind of apartment he could afford, and help him look for the apartments if he needed rides to go put in applications, assist with that. And those were what our plans were, to assist Mr. Dotson.
So you have plans to assist him, but you have not yet assisted him. Is that correct?
Our parent support worker had met with Mr. Dotson and discussed what he was doing next. And at that time, he had informed us he was staying in a hotel and getting his ID, as he has stated, so that he can start working. I did suggest, we did talk about different ways of getting funds in the moment. If he needed any rides, to contact us, and we were available to take him places for either resources, or if he needed to go up to the DMV or take him to get his ID.
But if you could answer my question, that would be great, ma'am.
I'm sorry, can you restate the question again?
Yeah, you have plans to assist him, but you haven't actually assisted him, correct?
We did provide some sober living opportunities for him
that he cannot afford, correct?
It was my understanding that with the Oxford House, that there was an option. I didn't know if I tried to call myself several times, different places, but he was able to stay there. They could work something out with him. And that was our suggestion, was to go to call the Oxford House. And when talking to Mr. Dotson during that time, he did inform us that he would have had to contacted them the week prior to being releasing to have a secure spot for him at that time.
So he didn't have a spot, correct?
He didn't contact them prior.
Had you told him about the Oxford House prior, so that he would know to contact them a week ahead of time?
I did tell him every time I met with him while he was incarcerated to start looking into options and resources at the jail for sober living. I know they did provide him with a packet of living places, and that we would assist him and to come up with a plan. And I did sit down and discuss, what was he going to do when he was released? Okay.
And so since September 15th, have you sat down with him to develop this plan?
Yes, we talked about, I went and met with him at Miss Armstead's house, and we sat and talked, and he had told me that he was going to ask his brother for money for a hotel, and then keep calling the sober living places.
Have you since the day that he was released, have you been back to the house?
Yes, that second time when he was having issues.
Since September 15th.
Yes.
Friday, September 15th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when?
That was the day she had asked me when I'd been back to the home, and I had. It was on a Friday. I believe it was the Friday after the 14th. And I do apologize for not having that date.
That's fine. I'm looking at Friday. It would have been September 15th.
Oh,
and
then that
today is September 25th. So have you been back to the house in the last 10 days?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So does that mean that you haven't done any spot checks to make sure that nobody is breaking any rules?
No, ma'am. He what?
Okay, thank you. Did St. Francis assist with the hotel since he couldn't stay at where he was supposed to be?
No, ma'am.
was St. Francis through emails asked about helping pay for a hotel for Mr. Dotson?
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, through emails, there were many requests for St. Francis to assist with housing for these past 11 days, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that hasn't happened yet, has it?
No, ma'am.
But you've not done any spot checks because you're not concerned about Miss Armstead's protected capacity, are you?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Pass the witness.
Ms. Mason.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, Ms. Branch, why have you not created a family plan of service that details the actual services that you're requesting Mr. Dotson to complete?
I apologize. It is actually created. I need to send it to him and sign it and get the signatures on it and sit down with him to go over it.
Why haven't you done that yet?
I haven't gotten a chance to schedule him in yet. I have been communicating to him about what I have got, like with emailing the therapist, setting up Fatherhood on Fire, and been communicating with him throughout.
One of the, I guess, concerns that you've addressed or that you're saying with your attorney is that you're not sure if Mr. Dotson will, I guess, his lack of engaging in services. Would you agree with me that in August 28th, when you filed your report with the court, you stated in there that a more comprehensive family plan would be created upon his release, and that in that family plan, you knew that he was set to be released September 14th of this year, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so it's been 11 days and you have not actually given Mr. Dotson his family plan of service.
No, ma'am.
Okay, and what specifically, you keep talking about concerns with drug use. What do you have in front of you to show that? I guess, why do you have that concern?
It's the unknown. As I explained to him, once we get several clean tests, we can see from there. But at this point, I do have the clean hair strand and I have the clean UA, and I just obtained those this morning from our system.
Okay, and so
I didn't have those before.
And you heard Mr. Dotson state that he's been sober for at least a year, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what more do you need from him to I guess, show you that he is in fact clean?
Usually we look at several months of clean testing to kind of just as proof of backup that I have these tests in hand and he's clean.
So really it's just speculation on your part on whether or not he actually has a drug problem, right?
I have talked to him about his past use. He has talked about being an addiction or having being an addict. And I'm just confirming him being clean with our additional drug testing.
Okay. Did you send him for a UA last week?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would you agree with me, ma'am, that it would actually be helpful for Miss Armstead if her son were in the home to help out?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you would also agree with me that there are certain terms that you can put in a safety plan to ensure that the child would be safe, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would you also agree with me that to ensure that both Miss Armstead and her son are following through with that safety plan, that you could do unannounced home visits, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you had the ability to do that last week as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And you chose not to do that.
I believe that Mr. Dotson was staying
Yes or
in a
no?
hotel.
Did you choose to do that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of questions. Brenda, you were cut off shortly when you were getting ready to say one concern that you had about Mr. Dotson. What were you wanting to tell us at that time?
Our concern, which I'm sorry, I'm having issues thinking about which time I was at.
Okay, let me back up. Ms. Hudson asked you, do you have any concerns? And you said no. And then she asked you about, do you have concerns, Ms. Armstead? And you started to say, well, I do have one concern. And she just told you to answer the question about Mr. Arms or Ms. Armstead and move on. Can you tell us what you were wanting to talk about with respect to Mr. Dotson at that time?
Yes, sir. My concern is that he has lived in his mom's residence before and that he hadn't complied with probation. His charge was before Azalea was born, but his probation was during Azalea's lifetime. And I guess my concern was that he didn't comply with probation and then unknown drug use between the time he entered jail and now, essentially, or before the time he entered jail.
Have you done safety plans before in cases where it just doesn't work out? Does a safety plan ensure that the child is safe?
No.
And is it the concern of the road ahead of Mr. Dotson that has the department more concerned than just a safety plan in place?
Yes, sir.
Do you think it's in the best interest of Zaylee that Mr. Dotson be placed into the home?
No, sir.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Evelyn?
Ma'am, if the visit on the 14th went well the very day he got out and the visit at St. Francis went well, why is the department opposed to Ms. Armstead supervising his visitation, as is often done with family members?
We are not opposed for it happening in the future. I had talked to actually Mr. Preston and Ms. Armstead about this matter, and that we were going to allow Ms. Armstead to monitor visits. We just wanted some monitored visitation by us first for a period of time and then transition to Ms. Armstead monitoring the visits.
How long is a reasonable period of time in your mind?
That situation, I apologize for this, but that would be something I would definitely staff with my supervisor or program director.
Well, I realize you might not make the decision personally, but how long would we have to wait for you to decide that that was the appropriate thing to do?
I would say about a month at least.
And we're already 11 days into a situation where they've both been very compliant with not having unsupervised contact, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And there's no safety plan and no drop-ins and nobody looking over their shoulder, true?
No, ma'am. Or yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Okay. That is a true statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Pass the witness.
Ms. Hutton?
I don't have anything further, Judge.
Ms. Mason?
I don't have anything additional.
Mr. Mitchell?
Your Honor, we have no other witnesses.
Okay. Ms. Hudman, any witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Mason, any witnesses?
No witnesses.
Do you have a recommendation, same as your recommendation before, or do you have something different now, Ms. Mason?
Your Honor, my recommendation would be the same, obviously just a safety plan in place and making sure that Ms. Branch is checking in regularly to ensure the child is safe, but I have no concerns whatsoever that Ms. Armstead would follow through with that safety plan.
Okay, well, I certainly understand the department's concerns. This is a very unusual situation to place a child in the home of a parent without having engaged in any services yet. And the reason for that, Ms. Armstead and Mr. Dotson, is because the worst thing that could happen for this little girl is for you to relapse, Mr. Dotson, and then be pulled away from her. That would be very harmful to this little girl, and that's what we're trying to avoid. It would basically be another removal and another source of trauma for this little girl. So I understand the department's concerns completely. And that's what we're trying to avoid in this case. But this is a unique situation where We've got sort of two cases going on at the same time, a CPS case and a probation case. And the best case scenario is that both of those work out and they work hand in hand with each other and both of them are successful. While the placement is successful also, that's the goal in the case. So I am going to allow the father to move into Ms. Armstead's home with a very strict safety plan. And you both need to understand that my biggest concern, I mean, Mr. Dotson, you've only been out of jail for a week. And my biggest concern is that you get back and start hanging out with some of the same people that you were with before and a relapse happens. And then you have to be kicked out of the home either by Miss Armstead or CPS or me or whoever. It doesn't matter who kicks you out of the home. What matters is this little girl has to see her dad leave again, which would be awful. And that's my biggest concern. So the safety plan is obviously no unsupervised contact for Mr. Dotson. Certainly if Miss Armstead needs respite, needs to go to the doctor, needs whatever she needs to do, and can't take Azalea with her, we need a backup caregiver to be a babysitter. It can't be Mr. Dotson. Do you understand that, Mr. Dotson?
Your Honor.
When I say no unsupervised contact, that's what I mean.
Yes, Your Honor.
If I get any evidence whatsoever that you are alone with this child or with the child and not an approved caregiver is there with you, then we're going to have to remove the child from Miss Armstead's home, and that would be terrible. Sounds like she's doing very well in that home, and that would just be the worst case scenario is to have to remove her from Miss Armstead's care because she's done a great job there. So that's number one on the safety plan. Number two is I would like for you to engage in an NA program immediately. Start going once or twice a week if you can, to make sure that you're doing everything you can to avoid a relapse. That's what the goal is. I would also like for Mr. Dotson to get involved in Mr. Gatlin's substance abuse group and therapy as soon as possible. And if we need to talk to Mr. Gatlin about the situation that we have here, where we're putting a parent back in the home with the child a lot earlier than we normally do, maybe Mr. Gatlin can get us in right away. Let's certainly speak to Mr. Gatlin about the circumstances of this case and see if he can get him in right away. And then the next one would be that Mr. Dotson would sign a release for the department to be able to have access to the probation records and drug tests and all of that. Okay. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Okay. I feel pretty good about Miss Armstead and her protective capacity at this point. So I think this is going to work out fine for everybody. I certainly hope so. We are set for a final hearing January the 4th at 9, and the next permanency hearing is that day as well. But like I said, Mr. Dotson, Miss Armstead, if the department gets any evidence whatsoever of a violation of any of these things that I've outlined for a safety plan, I'm sure that they will be wanting to remove the child from Miss Armstead's care and putting her in foster care. So I truly hope that both of you follow all the rules.
Your Honor,
Okay.
Your Honor, excuse me, I do have one other question of the safety plan, or perhaps this will fall under the family plan. Will Mr. Dotson be required to submit to random
Yes,
drug testing?
certainly. Random drug testing by the department as well. If we have a safety plan that's delivered and there are any issues with the safety plan, just let me know if we need a hearing on that.
I will, and I just also asked the department to send me the updated plan before they ask him to sign anything. Will the release for probation need to come from St. Francis or from probation?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
It'll come
think-
Rhonda, do you know?
It'll come
From
from
probation.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay,
the
thank you.
release, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, I hope that this situation works out. Like I said, it's very unusual, but we're going to keep our hopes up and make sure that this little girl is taken care of, and hopefully it all works out for the whole family. Okay?
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Okay.